Hello and welcome back to the machine learning course. So last class we discussed about an introduction about the machine learning course, and this class will be dealing more into this. So if you have missed the first lecture, click onto the description below, you will find the link to the previous video. So let's move on to the next lecture. Now let's do a verbal recap of what we discussed in the last class. Last class we discussed about exactly is machine learning. So machine learning, as we discussed, was a relation or a techniques to find relation or a mapping or any mathematical relation between two variables or a variable. It could be variables among itself, which we would be seeing today. So let's move on. So in the forthcoming topics, we will be dealing, or the forthcoming videos, we will be dealing with these topics. We will be dealing about supervised machine learning, unsupervised machine learning, regression, classification, and we will be dealing with an introduction to linear regression for some videos. And then we will be moving on further. So let's move on. So machine learning can be classified on the basis of two subparts: supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. So supervised machine learning, these categories are based upon what your data is given to you for training. Now, when I mean that what data is being given you for training, which implies that what all data I'm able to see to train my model. Let's, for example, in last class I told you about the example of symptoms and disease, right? So symptoms were on the first column. Here there were symptoms, and in this part there were diseases. So symptoms were being mapped to diseases. Now based on amount of data, this data what we are actually using, we employ different algorithms to actually solve this problem of predicting diseases or to find a mapping between these two. So yes, this could be broadly classified into these two categories. Now there are further more categories like semi-supervised machine learning or reinforcement semi-supervised machine learning, or there could be reinforcement learning, but since it's a very introductory course to this topic, we won't be delving into that, and it is much beyond our scope. So yeah, that's now when I actually state a division of machine learning, I actually mean this the categories of algorithms which are involved. You would find that those in the same category, I mean the ones in supervised machine learning, they would follow something similar, and the unsupervised machine learning, the algorithms would be different. The algorithms would have something in common in unsupervised machine learning, supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning, but of course they would be different. Okay, let's not confuse it and let's move on further. So now let's see what is supervised machine learning. So supervised machine learning deals when the data is labeled. When your data is labeled, this implies that your axis, let's for example consider a data set, okay, and your axis, I mean the input variables, is what in this part, and your output variables is in this part. Now let's take the example of symptoms and diseases. So here the axis would be the symptoms. These would be the symptoms. Okay, I can't write it all using a mouse, you see. And Y would be the diseases. So we are actually mapping between these X and Y's to actually perform some relation, to find a relation, and we are using supervised machine learning algorithms to find a relation between X and Y. So you see that the data set is labeled. Further would be like, for example, if you want to predict like the price of gold or price of silver over a given time interval, over a given year, so you find that you could be plotting somewhere, you could have a data of somewhere like, okay, let me go back, and you could have a data of somewhere like the year would be in this column. This column would be having the year part, and this column would be having the price, right? And so from these data or from these analysis, we would be predicting what would be the price of the gold over these years. So like the data set, so actually it's not complete. Actually, I want to say that the data set which is actually labeled or which is used for training. So if you see that like other examples would be the data set of labeled dogs, cats, and so on. I mean, for example, if you've been given the images of dogs and cats and which are appropriately labeled, so these would be labeled data set. Let's move on to the next classification. Now let's move on to the next second, what is known as unsupervised machine learning. So here we are given some data and we are not labeled. Now we need to find out a relation or some pattern among those data sets. As like for example, we need to detect fake emails from a corpus of 1,000 of emails. Or for example, you need to identify your fake news. So like you are given a lot of data and you are not said which of them is a fake one or which of them is actually not viable for your use. So you need to predict this, and there is no label data. You need to find out the label. You need to predict the label out of that, and so that is what is known as unsupervised machine learning. So just for graphical purposes, let's for example, in this two images, we are actually perfectly segregating our data points of finding out patterns. Like for example, these red part, the yellow part, or the green or the blue part are not were initially not separated, but after applying algorithms, we can cluster these data points appropriately. We could easily cluster these areas appropriately, as you can see like that. Or so these are basically clustering algorithms, dimensional reduction algorithms, which we may be dealing further if we have time for that. So like here in this example also, we have seen that these data can be easily clustered, or these data may a successful pattern. Now, for example, I have got a lot of these news. These are news articles, and these are termed to be as the fake ones. So my algorithm has correctly classified the fake algorithms here. The fake news. I'm sorry, the fake news. That's what my data is all about. So let's move on. So as you can see now, these two gives you a classification between this. So as you can see now, for example, let me take up a different color. Now, let this part be the input part, and let this part be the output part, right? These are x's and these are y's. Now, the input part and the output part are labeled. As you can see, the y part is perfectly labeled. For example, from sepal length, which is 5.1, sepal width, you got different values, petal length, you got different values, and from these you are predicting your species, which is actually centosa of some flower. So from x's you are mapping it to a y, which is, I hope, what type of machine learning is this? If you are thinking of supervised machine learning, you are correct. Now let's move to the right part. Now as you can see, our data has been perfectly segregated into clusters. Now what I mean by clusters is not unsupervised machine learning. All clustering algorithms are not unsupervised machine learning algorithms. You see, now that after applying algorithms, my data has been colored perfectly, but initially there would be some random points, and we need to find out a pattern among these points, which is our concern. So as you can see, it is perfectly segregated this part, the pink part, or perfectly segregated this part, the red part, or the blue part, or the yellow part, and other parts as well. As you can see, the red part over here and over here are showing the similar patterns. So we are finding the patterns among the x's, like this is the input variable and we're finding the pattern among the x part or the input variables, and we call this, and we deal this with unsupervised machine learning. And because the y is not labeled exactly, so here is a broad classification, an overview classification of what exactly the machine learning algorithms are. And now in this course, we will be actually dealing up with something, we'll be dealing with only this part of the lecture, this part of machine learning, because since only an introductory course, because this part itself is a very long part and many of times we also come through this part. We will be taking up some parts of this as well, but majorly we'll be considering of only this part. So so and thank you for watching.